to Inside the 18. I'm Michael Magid, live in Hollywood, California. With me, you know him as Pro GK Academy, also Philadelphia Union's #1 fan now, Omar Zeenni. And joining us, what's up, dude? I love the background, man. You went all out with the Philly Union. You didn't just go like a Philadelphia Union logo. You went like the most high level. You went the whole city, dude. I love it. Speaking of Philadelphia Union, the city of brotherly love. Speaking of that voice that you're hearing right there, that booming voice right there, you guys know him. We really don't need to give this guy an introduction. I mean, everyone who's a fan of Pro GK Academy or Inside the 18 media content knows this man. He's the director of goalkeeping for the Philadelphia Union. You know him as GK1 Goalkeeping. You know him as founder with IGCC. The one and only Phil Wheddon is back on Inside the 18. Very late at night for you, so thank you for making the time, man.
No, thank you for having me on, and that was a very Hollywood entrance. I feel kind of important now. I feel like I should have some stars or something going around. I don't know.
Well, you got plenty going on, man. I mean, you've got old school. Is it Ulsport? I can never pronounce it right.
It depends. See, it depends on where you're from. If you're German, it's Ulsport. You got to get a sh in there. If you're English, it's Ulsport. Okay. If you're American, it's how you say it.
which is I don't know. Ulsport?
Yeah, Ulsport. There you go.
Phil, did you I don't know if you heard the episode where we had Franz Hook on, and I just kept trying to pronounce it, and I'm like, did I pronounce that right? He's like, no, nobody does, so don't worry about it. Like nobody gets that one down. Phil, it's been a while since we had you on the show. We had you on the show back in January, obviously when you were doing a clinic for Impact Goalkeeper Academy. Shout out to Joe Velasco and Mizzy over there, and Jeff Tackett from Southern California Goalkeeper School, who put that whole event together with yourself. Why don't you kind of just update, kind of some of the newer insiders who might not be familiar with what you're up to now?
Yeah, well, obviously, as you said, I'm the director of goalkeeping for Philadelphia Union. We were in full swing in the season, and then we flew out to LA. Had a good game against LA. We actually drew 3-3 with LA FC, and then the following week, before our home opener on, I think it was March 12th, we were actually pulled off the field because of the COVID pandemic. Everything was shut down, and then I think the rest is kind of history. It was a long time to come back and play, and the protocols and everything we went through were certainly challenging for all of us, and they're still challenging for all of us, in different parts of the country. But it was a challenge as a coach, because you're trying to work with goalkeepers remotely almost, so you have to be very creative. And then the MLS is back tournament. We flew down there on July 2nd, and we came back last Thursday. So 5 weeks in the bubble, and as you can see, I brought the bubble with me right here.
No, I mean, I love it, man, because you've got the nice solid motif right there of the IGCC right there, so you have to take something from Florida back with you to Pennsylvania. And the craziest thing is it's awesome is because during the MLS's back tournament, obviously shout out to Dre, had a fantastic tournament, Golden Glove winner of the MLS's back tournament. Little unfortunate on the result, those things happen in football as we all know. But Omar and I just kept going back and forth just on the performances that Dre were having, and just me having a little bit of chat with him. It seems like the working relationship has been working out, so it's really awesome. So.
Yeah, obviously the environment was challenging for the players and coaches alike. The structure of your training sessions had to change because you were busing to and from the training location. So it wasn't like you could go early or, carve out time for the goalkeepers. We had to be quite creative with that. And obviously the head coach, Jim Curtin, and the rest of the staff were very, very accommodating as far as, allowing me extra time when needed. Again, you train your goalkeepers, and you hope that you've covered your bases, and you hope that they're ready to perform. And obviously, Andre had a very good tournament. he's a very, very gifted goalkeeper, and it's great to see him playing so well.
Yeah. Speaking of that, you were talking about obviously the difficulties that you had in regards to, putting the sessions together because of the social distancing measures, making sure that everything was safe and everyone was healthy and all that. And obviously a lot of coaches are going through that right now throughout the world, really. And it's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on, because I think you're honestly so great at session planning and session organization. In fact, we might even look at some videos of some sessions that you've put together throughout the years. And, now more than ever, you need to be organized. So kind of for maybe some of the parents out there, or maybe younger coaches who don't really know what we're discussing when we talk about session organization and session planning, can you kind of, break that down in your words?
Yeah. So obviously, whenever you do a session, or whenever I do a session, you've got to have an outcome in mind. You've got to know what you're looking to get out of the session. And then find those building blocks as to how am I going to organize this to make the most efficient and effective use of my time and the goalkeeper's time, so they don't stand around and wait for me to move goals and do this, that, and the other, and throw out all the toys that are out there and make it a circus. So the organization of the session, as far as where you put items on the field, I think is critical. Especially in my environment, or a professional environment where you have limited time. So if you're taking 5 minutes to switch goals and things, it's just not efficient use of time. A lot of goalkeeper coaches don't have a tremendous amount of space to work with. So how can you lay out a session to accomplish your goals, to get the outcome with minimal equipment in a confined space? And we're all facing those challenges. And as you know, during the initial stages of the COVID pandemic, there are a lot of videos that came out, and we all, and myself included, we all tried to help different people with training ideas. Now that you can actually go outside and maybe you can do some individual sessions and such, now it's how do I create environments that are going to benefit the goalkeeper, that are realistic to goalkeeping, with limited numbers and maybe even limited number of soccer balls, because I know that in some places they're saying you must use the same soccer ball for 2 people. So the organization part of it really does need to be thoroughly thought out. And as far as the planning, the planning side of it is, how am I going to get to where I want to be at the end, and what is my outcome? So again, it takes a lot of practice to actually to nail it. And as coaches, we very rarely nail it. So I'm still working on it myself. You go out with a goal in mind, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, yeah, I want to bring that up in regards to, the trial and error, because I'm not going to put you on blast here, Omar, but we've had conversations because, Omar's very passionate about, in fact, actually, it's because of you, Phil, and because of a lot of the, the different, no, there's a lot of the different courses that you've taught. Omar's he very much took a lot of knowledge from that. And he's very particular now. He's very meticulous in his session planning, in his session organization. Not saying you weren't before, Omar, but you even send
it's
pictures.
A different level.
You're like, does this look okay? You're like, does this look okay? What do you think of this? Tell me your thoughts on that. So tell me how that's
different now.
Yeah.
I had to Phil. I think again, he posts on his story sometimes on Instagram where you have balls in one area and then he shifts the camera somewhere else and you can see it, things are set up in different places. And for young coaches, for us, I mean, we're very much inspired by that. And I think I posted a picture a few days after he posted it to show him like my respect, because I think when you start seeing the professional players or professional coaches do that kind of stuff, you start realizing, oh wow, okay, to get to that next level, I need to also streamline my sessions so that the goalkeepers are seamlessly going from point A to point B to point C. And I think, again, that's showing the players that you care, and that's how you garner respect. And I'm sure, Phil, you and Andre, stepping in, he's an accomplished goalkeeper, you're an accomplished goalkeeper coach, but at the same time, you guys had to meet in the middle, and I'm sure that was a big respect factor for you too.
I think, well, thank you, first of all, for not killing my session. But the organization, when a goalkeeper or any player walks onto the pitch, you don't want to be walking on with a bag of balls and some cones and throwing them down, putting them down at the time that the goalkeeper is supposed to be working. So, as a player, you would want to walk onto the pitch and know that the plan is in place. And, to be honest with you, the three goalkeepers that we have in our first team all have different training ideas. They all have they're all very, very different goalkeepers. We have one younger goalkeeper, Matt Fries, who's an exceptional athlete and is a very, very good goalkeeper. Then we have Joe Bendick, who's a seasoned professional, and then you've got Andre as well, who's a seasoned professional, but both are very, very different. So to try and create an environment that marries all three different styles of goalkeeping and meets their needs can be a challenge. So it's a work in progress. Again, as I said, I'm still working on it, and every day when we step on the field, you can see what's going on in their minds. You can see that, okay, what's this? What are we doing today? What's happening here? All right, there's a small goal here. There's a mannequin. Oh no, there's a mannequin there. And they start to try and think about what you're doing in the session. But I think we've come to a good understanding, and I try and make sure that all three of them get what they need. And in
You guys hear me? What just happened right there? Can you guys hear me? Hello? Did you guys lose me? Can you guys hear me? What the heck happened with my my iPods? Okay, so obviously something happened with my iPod, with my AirPods right here or whatever. Let's as long as you guys can hear me right now, I want to move on to this kind of Phil, you brought up a really good point in regards to the session. You don't want to be walking on with a bag of balls, right? So the bottom line is that, like, when you get to the field, right, you have a specific amount of space that prior to when you get there. I think one of the biggest issues that a lot of goalkeeper coaches make is that before they show up, they don't know what they're dealing with. And I know a lot of times with clubs, you may have to adjust and everything like that. But how do you make sure? Do you go and look at the facility prior, or how do you go about doing that?
bus across the facility. A 9:30 bus across the facility would set the field up. The players would leave the hotel at 10:10. By the time the field typically it's really just a case of getting to a facility early so you can scope things out. Sometimes, obviously, Michael, it's unavoidable because there's someone on the pitch before you. So you have to have a plan in place. You have to have organization in place. You can't just wing it. And I mean, 100%, I've been guilty of that in the past. But as you are around more experienced people and you're around higher level athletes, they know if you're winging it or not. And then as Omar talked about, there's a respect factor there. And once you lose someone's respect, it's very difficult to get it back.
Omar, is that something that you've recognized, even just at the collegiate level, that when you show up to a field and they know that you know what you're doing and they know that you have a plan in place and that you're not just, coming up with something on the spot or deer in the headlights because you didn't know that, this session was going to be taking place in this area and now you've got to move and everything like that. Do they sense that?
They do. Yeah. I think even at the level that I'm at, doing grassroots stuff and kids coming in, most of the time I have my session planned out. I learned that from Phil and some other coaches as well, where, on paper, sometimes you need to draw out what could potentially go wrong, and then have a solution for that, so that if you, like you said, Mike, get caught up with somebody. I think I've had people who had permits on my field, and I've had to switch to a smaller side of the field, and I'm realizing, okay, I have this part of it, maybe I can adjust this a little, kind of like feel that you're calm as a coach and that nothing's going to throw you off. They know that you're prepared, and they know that you're going to bring the best of the table to make them develop. And I think at the college level especially, I had 5 keepers this year, and having those honest conversations with the goalkeepers that, okay, today's going to be particularly just focused on the number 1. You guys can stay after, we'll get reps. Or today's going to be all about the number 2 and the 3 to get them reps. Number 1's going to rest. So as long as you kind of precurse every session to have them understanding of what your goal is and what the direction of the session is, I think that's where the respect factor comes in. I've had coaches in my past who we do a session, and throughout the they don't necessarily know where they're going to go, but they said, okay, you got this many reps going to your left. I think we're good here. Let's go to the next one. So it didn't seem like it was planned, but not that I had a loss of respect, but I just didn't feel like it was planned sometimes. And I just felt, okay, this guy's winging it, like Phil said. And you kind of get it. You kind of get a feeling that, like, okay, does he really care about my development? Does he really want me to see me grow as a goalkeeper? Because it doesn't show with the actions.
Yeah, Phil, is it also a level of arrogance? Because I think that's something that I've seen a lot of times with the younger goalkeeper coaches, and I'm not going to name any names or whatever, but is that they kind of think like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I can just show up and I can make it happen, and they're going to love it because I'm so good, And I think one of the great things about somebody like yourself at your level is that you're so humble. Is that I know that every time you put on a session, you come up to people afterwards, because you've come up to even me and been like, was that all right? Like, what would you change? What would you adjust? And you're doing that because you generally want to see what can you adjust to make it run even smoother, right?
Yeah, I don't think any session is ever perfect. There are always things that we can do better. And to answer your first question, and for some reason, this happens in goalkeeping more than anything else that I've come across. Everyone can always do your job better. So everyone has an opinion on how you coach, what you do, the material you coach in the exercises, how you look, the gloves you wear. Everyone has something to say, and oftentimes, and that's fine. And feedback is fantastic, because feedback is how we get better. And just to touch on what you just said, that's why I asked those questions, because I'm looking to get better. So I want that feedback. But the main thing for me is, like, for example, you go on the internet and you look at all these sessions and people post all this stuff, and there are all these negative comments. The question that we never seem to ask is why. If you can understand the person's why, then you might be able to understand the purpose of the exercise, or the purpose of the movement that they're being asked to do. So finding out the person's why, I think, is very, very important.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. And, Omar, I know that that's something that you've been really working on quite a bit. And it's one of the reasons why you started doing, the mentorship program with the young players and everything like that, because you wanted to know the why they wanted to work on something rather than just putting something together because you think it would be a benefit to them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's like the biggest thing I learned from the quarantine as well, is that just kind of allowing the players to have a say in necessarily, in their development. And I think it was Andrew Sparks who was saying, he stepped in at Southampton, and he had those conversations with all the goalkeepers in the unit and said, look, help me help you. Tell me what you need from me to make you a better goalkeeper and get you ready for the weekend. And not to say that I never thought that was a question that you asked the goalkeepers, but I always thought, okay, you're at the Premiership level or at the MLS level, and you have these professional goalkeepers. They're expecting you to come with the information, not to ask them what they need. And then that kind of triggered me to realizing I've been doing it all wrong. It's the ego thing. You're trying to perfect the session and you're trying to do everything without getting the actual feedback from the goalkeeper. So you never know if what you're doing is actually helping them. So I started the mentorship program, and I've also just been doing, with my sessions, I'll text the kids that I'm training 2 or 3 days in advance. I said, hey, what do you each want to work on? They'll text me something, and I'll try and make it as game realistic. If one wants to work on distribution, one wants to work on crosses, okay, flighted service, and then from there to an outlet pass. So at least everybody's getting their fix. And then from there, obviously, when they come to this session, they have that buy-in. And again, that they're being heard. And I think that's the respect factor, again, is that they're being heard.
Yeah. I got a question for Phil right here.
Yeah.
One of the mistakes that I made as a younger coach, and I'm obviously still made this mistake in the future as well too, is unrealistic dimensions in regards to into my areas, and a lot of times it's a trial and error thing with me, and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize how big that space was, or I didn't realize how small that space was, and it wasn't until I started actually going into the session that I realized, you know what? You guys on a water break, I got to change this because this is not doing you service because this is not realistic to the game. You know, Phil, how important is that for you to make those adjustments rather than getting scared in the moment, being like, you know what, we'll just power through it for the rest of the session, but just being like, you know what, I was wrong, and I'm going to make an adjustment.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because a lot of times, and we still see it. You've got goalkeepers going through those 18 rung ladders when I understand fast footwork, and I do stuff, and I'll show you some stuff in a minute that has some fast footwork things in it. But the distances and angles have to be appropriate to the game. So are they distances that the goalkeeper travels in the game, and are they traveling to a position that they would take up within the goal in a game environment? So those are things, and it's really interesting. I'm still learning. I'm still on a daily basis. I've had conversations with our goalkeepers, and they've said, "Well, I would do it this way," because I'm like, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that," or why. For example, here's a good question for you. Why do we train outside the pitch? So you even have a white line. Why do we put cones on the line and have the goalkeeper stand on the goal line? Like, you put two cones on the line, on any line, anywhere on the pitch, and you say, okay, this is our goal. And then the goalkeeper stands on the line the whole time. Why do we do that?
I don't know, but I mean, I can tell you how many times I've done that in the past. I've been like, well, that area, the goal area is being taken, so I'm just going to do all my warm up activity over here. And you're right, it isn't in a realistic area to what they're actually going to be, where they're going to be moving in the game.
But what I'm saying is that sometimes that's unavoidable. But you put cones on the white line, you put them on a line, and then the goalkeeper typically ends up standing on the line,
as opposed to in front of the goal.
As opposed to actual realistic position. So it's very interesting, and sometimes again, I understand sometimes we are very, very limited on space, and it's difficult. If we could all train in front of goal all the time, that would be ideal, but that's just not a reality.
Well, you brought up a really good point right there, because I'll be honest with you, and myself and Omar have been in this situation. We can't get permits right now in Los Angeles, so we're using public parks, and they're not ideal. They're not ideal for training. And as I'm sure you've seen, the quality of the facilities for the Pro GK Academy viral videos has not been at the same level. The field, that is, the sessions have been great, but the field, it's been challenging for you, Omar, right? Like flank service, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, and I think, again, that's one thing that I've matured on as well, is that, like, I think the first few sessions that I had back from the quarantine, like I told you guys in the podcast, Mike, is that I was super excited to try all this stuff that I heard from the podcast, webinars, and really try and put my stamp on, okay, I learned so much throughout this quarantine situation that I bettered myself. And then I went out there, and unfortunately, my ego got in the way, and the field, not that it didn't allow it, but some of the sessions, like passing sessions, I had kids who weren't very good with their feet. So I'm putting them in situations to receive back passes with 6-7 bounces by the time it gets to them. And it's not necessarily working. We're not really getting quality work. So I had to shift my mindset of, okay, this field's not allowing me to do certain things because of limitations, because of dimensions. So let's get to the substance. And I really wanted to try and get a lot of front dive action, a lot of technical stuff with, game-like movements. And I felt, at least for me, that has helped them progress versus me trying to implement stuff that the field won't necessarily allow me to do.
So I think you brought up a really good point in regards to making sure that you can do what you want to do, Phil. And I think you've brought that up before too, is that, like, if you can't do it, don't try to do it, because it's only you're actually going to do a disservice that way. I'll be honest. I'll like one of the biggest mistakes I've made in the past, and I've done this with youth goalkeepers consistently, is unrealistic flank service. We're working on 3-goal situation, let's say, and the service is too close in. And I know, Omar, you brought up a great video this weekend about short crosses. So it is something that does happen in games. So it is something that we do need to watch or whatever. But I think you froze for a second right there, or you were just very interested in what I was saying. But that's a difficult one because kids will be like, well, I'm not going to be standing here. So now all of a sudden they're getting confused on their positioning because your dimensions aren't right. And that is frustrating. So Phil, do you mind if we look over some of your sessions right now and see kind of how you went about some things so that maybe some younger coaches out there can get a better idea of what we're discussing?
Sure.
Okay.
Is this where you're going to pull up something from the past, or you want me to show
I'm going to pull up something from the past here.
Oh.
I'm going to show you right.
Oh,
I'm going to show you right
go.
here. So let me grab this one right here, so you can see this one.
Well, Mike, so I'm gonna I'll add on to what Phil was saying in the kind of the discussion. Sure. I think again, like Phil said, is having them understand the why. That's obviously the biggest thing. And if it's smaller dimensions or a smaller field, as long as the kids know what you're trying to show, even if you bring on an iPad, an idea of what you're trying to get out of this, like this is the session or this is the type of play I'm trying to recreate. It could be from their game. It can be from a past training session or an actual MLS game, Premier League game. And you show them, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want your position to look like. And because of our dimensions, this is how it's going to play out. And as long as they have a visual, I think, and again, that goes into the planning. I mean, now I think it was Neil Thompson. I had to sit down with him like 2 years ago. And he said, I've never been to a session where the kids have seen me set up the field. And I was like, oh, he's like, yeah, I get there about an hour before and I'm done setting it up before anybody shows up. I don't want anybody to see me set up my session because that shows that I'm committed and I'm going to be late if I don't. So it changed my perspective of I need to get to the field instead of getting there at 7:30 for an 8 a.m. session. I need to get there like 6:55, 7 a.m., set everything up. And now I'm going through in my head what could potentially go wrong because of the dimensions. And there's no surprises because I'm solving them prior to the session.
I think you brought up a really good point. So, Phil, can you walk us through this session here in Ile-de-France?
Yeah. This was with the under 23s. Sorry, under 20s, US under 20s. So this is a close range shot stopping environment. Basically, there would be a goalkeeper. You can see there are 2 lines of cones on either side. Red, blue, and yellow, I think. So, or they usually match. So it'd be red and blue, and then so goalkeepers. There's one covering the 3 goals. There is the 3 small goals, and there is one on either side. So if there are blue cones, they'll each be at the blue. I'm at the top by the rebounder. And in actual fact, I had the rebounder there because I was going to use it, and then I didn't end up using it. So the balls ended up starting with me. I played a ball across I play it to one goalkeeper on one side. Like I said, it was the under 20 women. So she would play it across to the other goalkeeper who could shoot on the goals or could lay it back to me. And then I would shoot on the 3 goals. So the goalkeeper has to track the ball every movement, so she's covering all 3 of the small goals. This is something that I can't remember where I picked this one up. It might have been Michael Rechner at Hoffenheim. I can't remember, but this is one of my go-to activities for close range shot stopping. We've done this with the Union with two small goals, and it gets flying. It really works well. The goalkeepers, the servers, if you like, the people on the outside can also move down. So they move down closer to the goals. And now you get the situation of, do you block? Do you spread? Can you cut that ball off and win it outright? Or do you need to stay on your feet and just make the save and react? So it encompasses a multitude of close range shot stopping environments. And then you can see the big goal is behind. Then we just slid the 2 goals on the side. There's 2 small goals on the side. We slid them out the way. I had one protecting the small goal in the front, one protecting the large goal in the back, and we came up with some more fun activities from there.
But I think, one of the things, by the way, I don't know how you resisted not using the deflector, because I can't resist when there's a deflector. I can't resist using it. Big Joe, if you're listening to this, how hard it is to resist using a deflector when it's there. What I love about this is it shows the discipline. Look at, for all the young coaches who are watching this right now, look at the discipline it took to put that space together so that it worked like boom, boom, boom. And I don't know if anybody can tell what I mean by that, but I mean, isn't like separate this, move this, boom, boom, boom. I mean, I'm guessing your transitions took maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah, because again, this was with a national team, so you don't have a lot of time to mess around. The head coach says jump, you jump, So it was that's not any of my sessions right now.
No, it's not. I was trying to get off the shared screen.
Phil, quick question for you.
Yeah.
When you run those sessions, I know when you write them out, you have an idea of, okay, these are the potential saves that I'm going to try and bring out of the goalkeepers. When you have that idea of, like you said, a block save, a spread save, do you vocalize that or verbalize that to the goalkeepers prior to the activity, or do you just kind of let that happen naturally and organically?
One of the phrases that I use an awful lot is just make the appropriate save. And because what might be appropriate for you might not be appropriate for me. So that also allows us to have some dialogue. And helps me understand the goalkeeper themselves. So we can then say, he or she might say, well, I felt that they were going to shoot earlier, so I held my ground. When I felt they could have gone further and shut them down a little bit more. So I like to use the term, use the appropriate save. And even on a daily basis, and actually, one of our goalkeepers gave me a backhanded compliment not long ago. They said I'd forgotten what a volley looks like, because I typically don't hit volleys. So I'm asking them to make the appropriate save all the time, whether it's, if the ball's coming off the ground, is it coming at my chest, my waist, above my head, so very little scripted stuff. So I like to use that term, make the appropriate save. And yes, I make sure that they know that beforehand.
So I have a question about this in regards to when you're saying about they don't even know what a volley looks like whatsoever, because obviously this is a conversation, it's a debate that's all over social media in regards to whether I use a volley, whether or not use a volley. We had the conversation last week, I believe it was with Terry Mason from the FA. And, especially with the youngers, he encouraged, still using volley service, because there's a foundational element that still needs to be there. You want to try to keep it still clean, especially in the activation, phase, basically. I personally still use volley service in a foundational activation phase. I also, unfortunately, unlike Omar, don't get to work with, the world-class, 19, 20, 21-year-olds that Omar gets. I'm more of the 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. So, when it comes to striking to the ground, I want to make sure that's still realistic to the demands of their game, So can you kind of clarify that for a lot of goalkeeper coaches out there who are just like, well, we're not supposed to do volley service, so I'm serving the ball. And Omar, we even had this conversation when you were training an 8-year-old, and I said, hey, you have to understand the movement of that ball that you put on him. He's not going to see that. So you're not training him for his game.
For sure.
No.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I said from the first sessions that I had back, I think, again, Anthony White, who I was messaging regularly about the volley and, trying to figure out a way to create a goalkeeper who's a problem solver, not just developing a technique and actually developing a skill within that technique. And I try to do, like you said, Mike, trying to do the service from the ground. Then I realized too, I was like, I could still kind of hit it from the volley at the younger ages, but at the same time, every once in a while, hit that ball in the stomach area or, force them to go low for a scoop, just so that their mind isn't getting stuck, just adjusting and defaulting straight up. And I've seen young goalkeepers who I train who are extremely, extremely technical. And even on 1v1, sometimes they'll protect their face by shooting their hands up. And obviously with 1v1s, lower balls are going to be very hard to get if you shoot your arms up, and now you're cutting yourself in half, and your legs aren't going to be, your arms aren't going to be allowed to get down to the ground because you're shooting up. So just finding that right balance with those goalkeepers and making sure that they have an understanding of, when I'm hitting you volleys, there's going to be times where I'm going to miss hit it a few times just so I can see what your default goes to and so we don't have that bad habit.
You brought up a good point right there. And I want to just, make this clear to anyone that when I meant volley service, I didn't mean the same service over and over again. I still vary the service in regards to the flight of the ball and where the ball's moving and all that sort of thing. I just don't want anyone to think that I'm that bad of a goalkeeper coach. We have a question from Jake Davis over at University of Virginia right now for Phil. And he says, what would you say to those coaches who say or think that no two sessions should be the same? The idea that goalkeepers will see an exercise and know the outcomes / services, not saying it's correct, but is there some validity to that?
For me personally, I try not to replicate sessions. I try very hard not to, because now I replicate scenarios because scenarios have multiple outcomes. But the session itself, I think keeping it fresh for a goalkeeper is important. The rote and fundamental exercise of if you show up and you do this all the time, you get good at doing certain things that may not transfer into the game. So I do want to go back and just touch on the volley thing. I'm not on either ship. So, I personally use volleys game day and sometimes the day before a game. And also, and you actually made a really good point, it's got to be relevant to the service that they will see in a game. So are we doing crosses with 8-year-olds? So I don't know many. If the ball goes in the air in an 8-year-old game, it's by accident typically. So are we training them for the environment that they're playing in? But as far as replicating sessions, I think we can replicate outcomes. But keeping it fresh for a goalkeeper, I think is healthy. It's not wrong or not right or wrong. It's just something that I try not to do personally.
So I have a question about that, and Omar, I don't know how you feel about this too, but let's just take the goalkeeper camp environment, that's very prevalent in the United States, for instance, where you go there and it's a topic, and that's the topic that you're working on for that day, and they blanket it throughout. And I'm not saying that every camp does it this way, but for a lot of them, they blanket it from the 9s all the way up to the 19s, and they're doing the same session over and over again. Phil or Omar, either one of you guys, how would you guys adjust that to make it more beneficial to these kids who've flown out to this location or driven out to this location for the week?
So I think one of the things that we used to have in this country was you would have an organization that had 3 levels of camp. And if you were 9 to 12, you signed up for this. If you were 13 to 16, you signed up for this. And if you were older, that meant obviously you were much more accomplished and you signed up for this. And really each camp had a curriculum. And this is how we teach. These certain aspects of goalkeeping. I think honestly, for the most part, a lot of the game has changed. The style of coaching has changed. And should change, because one of the things that we see a lot, and people ask me what's the difference between an American goalkeeper and a European goalkeeper, for example. And American goalkeepers are very technical because they can move their body, they can catch, they can do all the things. The thing that the American goalkeeper has lacked, so I'm not saying this outright now, I'm saying has, the criticism in the past has been the tactical understanding of the game. So many coaches now are actually getting away from teaching topics and outcomes. So we're working on breakaways and on 1v1s, and at the end of the session, Sarah gets up and says, "Oh yes, I'm great at 1v1s now, great." But then in the games, they don't know how to apply it because the situation hasn't been shown to them. So more and more coaches are teaching scenarios which have multiple outcomes, and forcing goalkeepers to make decisions, which is personally the way that I would like to do it.
And Omar, I'm going to give you credit right here because you have been moving in this direction in the last couple of years as well too. And I've noticed it with the progression of your sessions on video and everything like that. Just how much more. And I'm not saying that they were artificial before, but just in regards to the fact that there's so many different scenarios and so many different variables on the ways that things could turn out, and how your goalkeepers have to make those adjustments and make those decisions. I just really just want to give you praise for that. So.
Thank you. No, I would say from, your advice and then from Phil and, taking Phil's course, I think it was.
Don't ever put me in the same category as Phil, please.
No, but I definitely got a firsthand, view of Phil's session. And, one of the things I remember was he was talking about like the fluctuation of how the game, how the game is seen for a goalkeeper. Sometimes you have a minute of constant action. The ball goes out for a corner. You come out, you punch it out, takes a deflection, goes out for a corner. You're seeing, 2 or 3 crosses back to back to back. And then after that, and then you get the ball, you put it down, you play with your team. Now you're building out of the back. And I remember in one of your sessions, Phil, we were doing, I think it was 1v1s. Yeah, it was block save 1v1s. And then you broke the group into passing exercises. And in my head, I was like, okay, I'm coming to see Phil and I'm trying to see why does this block save turn into passing afterwards? And then you said, I'm just trying something new. The game fluctuates from being in possession and out of possession. So why not train it like that? So in my head, I was just like, wow, that's like next level thinking. It's against conventional wisdom and what people are, I guess, kind of the cookie cutter type sessions and how it goes about it. And I think it was nice to see that someone at your level and your experiences were able to step out of the cookie cutter, I guess, ideal session and try something new. And I don't know if the goalkeepers, I didn't talk to the goalkeepers afterwards, but watching them, I think they were kind of like, oh, okay, this makes sense. I'm making saves and now I'm actually, focusing on a different way to make decision making, but with my feet. And I thought that was just so unique. And then I've been applying it in my sessions here and there. So I give credit to you, Phil. I think that was a really good point to obviously see firsthand.
Well, I appreciate that, but I stole it from someone else. So,
oh,
but that's coaching. So
yes.
I think one of the things, and I don't do that every day. That's not an everyday occurrence. But yeah, thinking about the flow of the game and training the mind to deal with momentary lapses in stress and behaviors, I think is critical. But like 90 minutes is a long time, to be focused on one thing. And when you go out to these camps, Michael, and you talked about camps, you go out to camps and you do 1v1s for 2 hours. I mean, that's a long time to be doing 1v1s, and it's just not something that happens in a game.
No, and you brought up a really good point in regards to time and place for everything too. One thing I will say, and thank you for letting me know that you stole it from somebody else, because I stole it from you as well too. And I've been doing this especially with my younger goalkeepers. Is all my sessions have been, we have the ball, they have the ball now. Because what I was finding is that a lot of my goalkeepers that were coming from me from private environment from their clubs had been only training in the we have the ball or they have the ball, but never putting it together. And I've been trying to explain it to them that, look, once you make the save, what's the next thing? Well, now we have the ball. So now you're a decision maker. And now if we have possession, and our whole goal is to continue possession and off the ball movement and all that sort of thing. Oh, your player just lost the ball. Now they have the ball. Now we've got to change our mindset. Now we're in a defensive shape. And now we're moving based on it from a defensive standpoint. And I just don't think that there's enough of that. I don't know whether it's in other countries specific, but I know specifically in the United States, there's just not enough of that. And so goalkeepers, there's no wonder goalkeepers get to Omar at 18, 19 years old and in college, and they don't know how to play the game. They know how to play scenarios, and that's it. Now I'm going to go to my soapbox there. So,
no. But I think that's critical. I think, being able to, again, it all comes down to relative environments and making the environment as close to the game as possible. So most of the time we have a scripted exercise where they know the outcome, and that's often the case in most warm-ups. And, the activation phase, if you like, where you know where the ball is going. Okay, I'm going to play it to your left, I'll play it to your right, whatever. But too often we continue that pathway through the whole session. And I know that Omar's probably heard me say this before, but that's the way that we're taught. And that's the way that licenses are taught. And everything is a progression. Everything is simple to complex, small to large. And we're taught to work in a progressive sequential order, when really the game doesn't present itself like that. And like you said, in possession, out of possession. We have the ball, now we don't have the ball. How do we adjust? All those things. And when we talk about an outcome of a session, your session design and the activities, exercises, drills, whatever you want to call them, the things that you create, do they have multiple outcomes? For example, are we saying the ball is here and I'm going to touch it past the mannequin and shoot? Or are we saying the ball is played to here and now we've got to see what the striker's touch is? Does he or she take the touch around the mannequin? Is it one touch into space? Is it laid back to the top of the box? Are there multiple outcomes and multiple scenarios? So, again, training multiple outcomes, I think, is really beneficial for decision making for goalkeepers, especially at older ages. Obviously, for younger groups, 8-year-olds and such, technique, and how to apply it within their game.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point in regards to pattern play. In my opinion, is something that I'm a stickler against it, especially at the more advanced ages, like Omar and I have discussed in the past. Is that when you start getting into patterns, then you get that neuromuscular response the same every single time, because your body's expecting that same movement every time, because that's all that you've been seeing. And Omar, I know that one thing that you do is you make sure that you throw in a wrinkle every time here and there, so that if they start shifting one direction, they start getting used to leaning one way or playing a ball into a certain space or whatever, you change it up immediately so that they have to deal with that irregularity.
Yeah, honestly, this kind of reminds me of my college days, Mike, when I was the teacher would say, most of the questions are coming off this study guide, and I would study the study guide, memorize the entire thing, and then come the actual exam, the test had completely different questions, or the questions were worded completely different, and I didn't know how to adjust. I didn't know how to improvise. And I think that's sometimes what I felt as a young coach. I was trying to force feed the kids the technique, without actually allowing them to develop the skill around it, to use it and apply it. So that was giving them the study guide, but the actual test, there were so many different outcomes and so many different options that they had no idea. They were deer in headlights every time they step and they go, well, this is not what I studied. So same thing with the kids now. I'm at that point where, again, the field that I'm at now, it's very difficult. Even with cutback situations, I do most of the finishing because of how bad the field is. Sometimes I may have to take 1 touch, 2 touch, but even taking that second touch, the goalkeeper can sometimes get caught readjusting. So that's a decision within itself. So I think that, again, a lot of my session planning now goes into when I sit down and write it. Okay, what is the potential outcome? Me as a striker, what kind of touches can I take to elicit different types of reactions from the goalkeeper? So again, like Phil said, and I think Andrew Sparks even mentioned it when I had him on the podcast a while back. He was saying just how organized you have to be, and that's like one of the traits that he looks for in young goalkeeper coaches is how organized are you so that you can improvise, but it's a calculated improvisation. It's not something that you're just kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. It's more of like, okay, I wrote this down. I realize it may happen. The goalkeepers aren't feeling it today. Let's change it up. But I think that's the best thing to do is having those outcomes already processed prior, or when you get to the field and getting there early.
I want to talk about this right here because I love some of the things. By the way, that field is allowing the randomness to come out. You don't even have to worry about it. You can just let the field do it for you. And I know Phil's been in that position before too. Not every field is those pristine Disney Wide World of Sports fields that the pros get. But there's a question here from Jason Shepard, Phil, and he says he wants to know that if you already have a plan in place prior to the last game, but in that game you saw a couple things that needed cleaning up, would your season planning be evolving because of that, or do you not want to highlight mistakes all the time? I'm a little confused on what he's getting at, but what I think what he's trying to say is whether you're allowed to, if you have a season plan, a session plan, if you're allowed to scrap that plan. And I mean, basically, Jason, you can do whatever you want. No, there's no right or wrong. But I think he wants to know your opinion on whether you ever do that. Do you ever scrap your plan and go, you know what? I just saw this on the film. This is where we're going to go now.
100%. 100%. So it's actually it happened to me many times while we were in Florida. And the game is the best teacher. The game will tell you everything that you need to know. So here, let me show you something. All right. So
yeah.
Hopefully this goes full screen.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Oh, you haven't got the nice pretty. Where's the picture? There's the picture.
Oh.
Okay. I don't know why it went portrait, not landscape. Sorry. So
That's okay.
Anyway, so take a look at this. This is LAFC. All right. So Philadelphia played LAFC March 7th. And forgive me those people that might have seen this. So this is something that I do after every game. I record the actions of the goalkeeper live in the game. So they're different to the Opta stats and things like that because it's based on what I see and what I feel. So you can, when you look at this, and I'll just show you the nice pretty picture. Look, there you go. There's a nice little pie chart. So that's the breakdown. And usually it's side by side. So I apologize. I don't know why it did that. Maybe if I was to zoom out, I don't know. No, apparently not.
No, but I like this though. This is providing the visual stimulation I need right now. So
okay, so all you've got to do is look at numbers anyway. All right. Yeah. So you don't need the pie chart. What stands out to you? Apart from we were getting absolutely smashed by LAFC, what stands out to you?
12 goal kicks? I don't know.
No, I was going to say long passes. I was going to say eight long passes, 20 yards, short passes, 0 short passes, which to me means that there was very little possession from Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, they were. It's also due to LA's style of play on the day.
This is saves, 13 saves.
13 saves, yeah, and collection. So if a ball rolls into the box, I count that as a collection. Okay. What else stands out?
5 1v1 situations.
5 1v1 situations, and 10 corner kicks.
Jeez.
Yeah. 10 corners. So prior to it's interesting, and I'll just stop sharing here for a second.
Okay.
Prior to the game, I thought that we had a great week of preparation. I thought we were doing well. We just lost to Dallas. We had a good week of training. I thought I'd covered everything. And actually, on the day, the goalkeeper Andre played very, very well. We conceded a goal off of a corner kick, and I said to myself, I look back at the week of training, and I'm like, you know what? Our team philosophy on training set pieces doesn't involve or didn't involve a tremendous amount of set plays. So Andre had not seen a ball from the corner since the last game against Dallas, and yet LAFC had 10 corner kicks. So then it started to make me think, okay, look, the game is telling us that he needs to see, and all of our goalkeepers need to see more stuff that is occurring in the games. So now I looked at that and I said, okay, well, maybe I could start an exercise there. And it doesn't mean that the ball is going to be served into the box. Maybe the ball is played to the corner of the 18-yard box and then played across or a chip to the back post, or just to try and create a different environment. So the game, again, going to Jason's question, the game will always tell you what something you might need to work on. We played New York City in the first game of the MLS's back, and there was a ball that was served in, and second game we played Miami. The ball was served in, and Andre came to box it, and he didn't, and the ball was headed, hit the crossbar, came back out. So Andre didn't get to the ball. And we had a conversation afterwards. And basically never really spent a lot of time working on boxing. And I thought to myself, actually, you know what? When was the last time that we really incorporated that into our training? Typically, as goalkeeper coaches, we wait for something to go wrong before we put it into our training. I had a really good conversation with Andrew Sparks, and we talked about these mid-range dives. So I don't know how people are probably already tuned out right now because they're sick of listening to me talk. But how many times do we in our training serve a mid-range dive, nice and comfortable, goalkeeper has to just dive and catch it? In games, very few goalkeepers are holding those because they have too much pace on them. So, do we work on deflect? Yeah, we want to catch everything we can catch, but do we work enough on deflecting? So let me ask you, what's apart from passing, what is the first thing that your goalkeepers do in their training sessions?
Handling.
How many times in a game do you actually handle the ball? At the higher levels, you're not catching the ball an awful lot, and yet we spend. If you're given 25 minutes to work with the goalkeepers before they join the team, I bet at least 10 minutes of that for most of us that are on this. Most of us say, oh yeah, we'll do 10 minutes of handling and different move. Might incorporate different movements, but they're catching and everything's comfortable. I did it today. So is that realistic to the game?
Look, you can say that the goalkeeper coach's best friend is the small cones patterns with into the handling. If you wanted to put a comfortable session for you to have an easy day as a goalkeeper coach, you put out some cones, you have them go through patterns in there, and then just some clean sticks to the ball right there. And I've been a culprit of it too. And a lot of times it's just because I'm like, oh, well, they need to stay sharp. I've been trying to work on steering as much as possible with goalkeepers. I find it, Phil, and I have a question for you about that, and maybe Omar, you can help me on this too. I find it difficult at the younger ages to work on steering. And I think you know why I'm talking about because of the motor skill aspect.
Yeah, but there's a way that you can for younger goalkeepers, when you say steering, you're talking about deflecting, pushing the ball in a certain direction, parrying.
Yes, playing in good areas.
Yeah. So you can do that from the knees. It doesn't have to be standing. And I think it's getting comfortable just with the contact point on the hand is important. We actually did a session. I sent the session to Andrew Sparks and a couple of other people actually after we did it, because we went straight into the exercise where the goalkeepers are on the knees. So I have one person to my right, one person to my left, and I'm striking the ball from an angle. We're actually on an angle in the goal. I struck it to his left, push it away. If he could catch, then catch. If you couldn't catch, you had to push it away, and then that ball was passed back to me, and then I struck it, and we went the other way. So it became a live environment, make it a decision-making catch or deflect. And you can modify that very, very simply. We then took it to a standing position, because my goal on that day, I swore that I was not going to do handling. I wasn't going to make it, so it was comfortable and everything else. So, and they obviously the goalkeepers look at you, they're like, what on earth are we doing here? But again, getting goalkeepers out of their comfort zone is important.
Yeah.
So because that's where we do the growth. That's where we do it. And again, all I'm trying to do here is just provoke some thought. Have you thought about doing these things that may be a little bit outside the box, a little bit out of the sequential order and the progression that we always teach? Because it might have people learn differently. Learn differently.
Look, I'm not going to shoot down the federation or any licensing course or anything whatsoever, but my entire education was built on the progressive session.
Yeah.
From A to D, really.
100%.
Phase 1, phase 4, Go ahead, Omar.
No, I just think I've I think I've had kids who apologize to me when they don't catch the ball. And I think it's like the stigma right there for them. It's like a, it's a bad session for them if they don't catch everything. And I'm like, no, like I want you to like Phil said, like, when you have an option to catch, and if you have to push. But sometimes to get into the subconscious of young kids, for me at least, I need to give them the opportunity to say, look, like if you can catch it, catch it. But if you can't, don't make a mistake by trying to catch it. Really just push it away. I'd rather you be convincing and putting it out of bounds than you dropping it right there, right in front, because you're trying to catch the ball, or you're fully extended and you're trying to knock it down when really a nice little tip over the bar would have done. So I think, again, it's like reprogramming what the kids nowadays are accustomed to hearing. And I think I saw a session recently where someone was teaching parrying at a camp, and comments were like, you should be teaching them how to catch the ball. And it's just like, that mentality is just so archaic now. Realistically, the statistics are showing with the balls and how they're moving. And the Jabulani was one of those too. You see, like Tim Howard never caught a ball. He punched everything. If you watch Belgium versus the U.S., how many balls did he catch? He didn't catch that many, but he was effective. Man of the match, Secretary of Defense. You know what I mean? Like he was doing a lot of stuff. So I think that's the efficiency versus the ideal technique should be the conversation from this point forward.
I think one of the things that you just said there is really important. The action must be intentional. So as long as the action's intentional and not a mistake, we all make mistakes. Obviously, my mother made a mistake, but we all make mistakes. And as long as that action is intentional, I have no problem. If you're going to tip it over the bar because you're unsure, maybe the conditions aren't great, put it over the bar. But make sure it's not because you were trying to catch it and then you weren't wearing Yule Sport gloves and couldn't catch it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you had those Yule Sport gloves on, you'd have that grip, so you'd be able to hold on to everything. Is obviously the way it would work out, right?
Yeah, the aqua grip is amazing.
Yeah.
Omar, you had a situation, obviously, and we've talked about it quite a bit on the show, and you've talked about it as well, on your social media channel, Pro GK Academy _ for everyone who doesn't know what it is, and that's nobody. Literally everybody who's listening to this knows what it is. Where you had it ingrained in you that you had to hold on to everything because your coach was forcing you to over and over and over and over again. And there's a question in here from Andreas, and he says, how do you address that necessary repetition of providing that neuromuscular response every time for that programming and get a player to go against that programming because it's been ingrained in them, Phil, once they get to the MLS level? I mean, you got a kid that's been doing this since they were 8 years old, coming through, corn-fed America,
Right. Well, I think obviously it comes back to what we were just saying. You've got to, at young ages, we should be teaching the goalkeepers to catch because that's relevant to their game. Most of the time that they're pushing the ball away and the younger goalkeepers is because it's outside of their body range and they can't get there using their feet and can't hold on to it. As the players mature, as the pace of the ball gets harder, as the goals get bigger, and you have to cover more distance, more range, that's when we need to be teaching. We need to provide them with the tools to be successful. I believe that you can't hold people accountable for information that you haven't given them. So when you say, why didn't you catch that? Or why didn't you push that away? Unless you've given them the reasons to do either one and have trained those successfully or repeatedly, I don't like the idea of the goalkeeper coach or the head coach coming back at the goalkeeper for making that decision. We have to make sure that it's like, we can use all the analogies, golf, a toolkit, whatever. We've got to have all the clubs, all the tools, so that we can make selective decisions. And what the decision you make could be different to the one that I make based upon physical dimensions, surface, everything. So there's a ton of variables. But going back to the question from Andreas, getting those repetitions is critical. And those repetitions have to come at an early age, because at the age of 15, 16, we're not necessarily, we shouldn't necessarily be training technique. We should be refining and impacting the decision-making process and the cognitive abilities of the goalkeeper. That's
Okay.
just my opinion.
No, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, and obviously when we had Peter Meller on and we talked about the different phases of development, and what you need to see at each different phase, that's something that he brought up in regards to, and honestly, that's, I think another thing too, is that we need to do a better job in this country of not disregarding or negating anyone that's working with younger goalkeepers. There's still very much a stigma in this country that if you work with youngers, you must not be a very good goalkeeper coach. That the best goalkeeper coaches work with the pros, and Phil, I've seen you work with the 8-year-olds and it was absolutely phenomenal.
I appreciate that. Thank
you.
Yeah.
I know Omar, you pride yourself as a big time, as we know, the greatest goalkeeper coach in the world from your comment a few years back. No, I'm joking on that one. Phil, how you doing on time, by the way?
I'm fine. My beauty seat doesn't work.
Okay. Okay. So I've a question here in regards to the session plan right here, because you've been talking about, the organization of the field. You've been talking about, okay, I've seen the game film. I've decided this is where I need to move with my session based on what this goalkeeper's seeing consistently through these matches. Where is the genesis of the session start? Does it start from when you're at the game, or does it start from the evaluation and the breakdown of the game film a day later?
Really starts with the evaluation of the game, the game film. But then also where are you in the week? What does your periodization look like? How many days are you before the next game? So for example, if you've got 3 days in between games, typically the day after the game is a regeneration. So there's not a ton of activity that goes on for the goalkeeper or for the players on that day. And then really you've got 1 day of prep, and then where you can push the goalkeeper. Then you've got 1 day where it's really make the goalkeeper feel good to play, and then you're playing. So it's really important for me to break down the film as soon as possible. And our video analysts and things like that, I know that I drive them nuts because have you got the links yet? Can I see the game? And I break it down. I don't ask them to break it down because I don't just want to see all the goalkeeper's actions. I want to see balls that come into the box that he does or doesn't come for. There's other decisions that were made throughout the game. So the environment we were just in was far different than your normal training environment. And I had to explain this to the goalkeepers because when you've got a game, 3 days game, you're always preparing for an opposition. There wasn't a lot of time for the personal growth phase, if you like. So what you're saying is, if I saw something on a Saturday, am I going to address that Monday, Tuesday? Well, in a normal week, that would probably be the way that you go. Or some aspects that all 3 of them would benefit from. But in the environment we were just in, it was all about game prep. So, for example, here I'll show you, and I apologize because this is right before, let's make this big. Right before we were playing Miami. So you can see we're training at night. Oh, that's noisy, sorry. All right, so dealing with obstacles in front of the goal. So ball in, so Mueller, for example, of Miami, faced up on the top of the box. Let's just move on here. All right, that's me. Ball in, ball back, and then it can come off anything. All right, again, because that's what the goalkeepers are going to see in their environment when they play. We're also training at night, and I know that the pitch looks very good, but there were no lines here because this was actually in a baseball field. So
wait, what? Seriously?
Yeah. Because our training pitch was an absolute disaster. It had been chewed up, and the rain and everything had crushed it. So I took the goalkeepers across here. That's where I almost hit the camera. And then we took it off to an angle. So again, just a quick movement here. we're off to the side, and then we've got the same activity from an angle on this side, and then same activity from an angle on this side. So again, dealing with all sorts of different aspects that you would see when you're preparing to play the next opposition. So in here, when that ball comes in, so right now that I'm playing the ball into Andre, he could lay it back, he could even turn, you know, so he could play a ball across all the mannequins. So now that I'm making a longer run, so it wasn't just ball in, ball back, and a shot. So we tried to play every eventuality out of that. So again, when you look at potentially what the goalkeepers were going to see, and if you look at the semi-final, Nani scores 2 goals in the semi-final. He actually bends the ball around, and then he has the one that he goes through. So those environments were, for me, were really important to prepare for before we played Orlando. Sorry, not Miami, Orlando.
No, but I mean, you look. I mean, and Omar, I don't know how you feel about this, you know, but I loved the utilization of the different types of, because I think that's a problem that I think a lot of coaches, including myself, have made in the past, which is where we set up very stagnant mannequin spots, and then we're training in those specific spots, and then the movement in the game, as you know, Phil, is messy. Did you choose those specific spots that you were starting to rotate everything around based on your scouting or of scenarios that you've seen, or was it just, you know, based on tendencies of those players?
Well, the 2 inflatable mannequins, the Air Toms, made by Quick Goal, quick plug for the sponsor, they were central defenders. So people in front of the goalkeeper that were, you know, you were typically going to have two people in front of the goalkeeper somewhere. The other mannequins were off the sides of those central defenders. So I wanted, we had seen shots come through players, little deflections and things. And again, if we don't train it, and we think catch all the time, if we don't train it, then when the ball is deflected, the goalkeepers can't hold their shape and can't respond. So that's a really simple setup. And I had the luxury of having what I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mannequins. I had that luxury. If you don't have that luxury, you can just be creative. Omar can use one of the trees that he's trying to play around, you know.
You've seen the field, I'm guessing.
I've seen the field. Play it over the car, around the tree. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Try not to hit the trash can.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because that's another thing too when we discuss session planning and organization. And look, I understand there's a lot of great positives to social media, but I want people out there to really listen before you post something. Is this going to benefit the goalkeeping community? Or is this because I want people to hear my opinion? You know, because I think there's just so many people out there who just want to just show their opinion, but it's not really benefiting the goalkeeping community. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox there. One of the biggest gripes I get from people is they go, I don't have access to this, or, well, that's great for so-and-so, but my players aren't at that level, and yada, 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 yada. So Phil, what do you say to those people so that they can adjust their sessions and make it work for them?
So Michael, I think equipment, we get hung up on equipment, all right? And you can run a very, very effective session just with cones, and you can be creative with it. So yeah, and I know that you asked if I would show stuff, so I'll show you one more session, and this was and this is just using cones, all right? And although I do have small goals in there, so you can see here. I'll go back to the first bit, and I apologize. Typically, this has been clipped. Right now, I don't have access to the clip version. So there are 3 cones on the 6-yard box. There's a red, a white, and a blue. there are 3 small goals behind, and each of them have a red. That each of them has a color cone in front of them, red, white, blue, and you could do that without having the small goals. Very simple here. Quick footwork. And please do not kick or head the yellow medicine ball. Says that in big writing. So cognitive processing, red, white, blue, bam, and then you're moving. All right, so very, very simple. And again, we talk about the volleying, there's your volleying. And now we get into something that is, and if you talk about having, and again, I apologize to anyone who's watching, here we go. Now those 3 cones, red, white, and blue, are off at an angle where you see the goalkeeper at the goal. All right, and it's going to be self-explanatory. I'm going to call the colors. The first color that I call, so again, now we're talking about processing information and maintaining and remembering it. The first color that I call, when the goalkeeper has to pass the ball into that goal. So watch how it works. It's got to go to red and then get back in for the save.
It's an in possession, out of possession type feel.
Yeah.
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 And that's what I really like about that. And I love the fact that there's the whole cognitive element as well too. So that it forces the goalkeeper to make decisions and think on the spot.
Now is Matt
get comfortable?
So you told Matt to just hit the ball in the bubble. Is that what I'm guessing?
Yeah, just anywhere around the body. Totally unscripted. So, and now what you have is, and this is very typical, the goalkeepers are focusing on the main action, and that is the shot stopping. So sometimes the passing wasn't as crisp because they were more focused on the second part of it, which was saving the shots.
Phil, is that just something just ingrained in us as goalkeepers that, you know, we're more focused on the defending aspect than the offensive aspect?
I just think we're focused on the next aspect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not necessarily defending, and then you see it on this side after it's been addressed, it becomes a little bit better. So now we talked about taking the touch in the direction that you need that ball to go, you know, the preparation touch, and the reason why now I've asked them to play in the direction or play to the goal that I say first is because I want them to scan when they look up, because now that ball's come back to the goalkeeper, scan, know where you're passing that ball almost immediately, because that's one of the things that I feel our goalkeepers don't do well enough in general, and that is in possession. They don't scan. That ball comes back to them. They don't scan like a quarterback and say, okay, I can go here, here, or here, which is the safest one, and play the ball. So again, that exercise had 3 cones. Yeah. I had goals, but you could have the player pass the ball and move. So you don't need all the toys. Just 3 cones would do it. Yeah.
That's it, Omar. Get rid of everything. Just the 3 cones, dude. Okay. Next video I want to see. It's just 3 cones, and you'll have a bunch of people commenting on there. They'll be like, "Oh man, you only have 3 cones. What is this? I can do this." You know. So as we start wrapping up right here, Phil, you know, one of the things I kind of want to ask you is, if you're a younger goalkeeper coach and you're just learning right now, because we have been, you know, I don't want to say we're discrediting the progression sessions that you know has been the traditional aspect or whatever, but we've been just basically showing a different way. What advice do you give them in regards to how to put their session together so that it's, so that it makes sense, but yet it still has all those game aspects to it and that realism to it.
So, I mean, the best piece of advice I could give is know your why. And that's, I know that I've said that before, but that's as simple as it is. Know what you're trying to get out of the session. Why are you doing it? What is the outcome? And are you taking the necessary steps to get to that outcome? At what points are you giving the goalkeepers information? And are you prepared for failure? Meaning, what could possibly go wrong, and make sure you have a plan in place. I've got a question for you, and even for the people that will see this. What is, and Omar, you please answer this as well. What is a successful session?
Man, I'm guessing this is a trick question.
No,
so,
not at all. I'm interested. What is a successful session?
I think,
Go ahead, Omar. You go first.
No, I just think when the objective is met, I think, again, from the start of the session, you have a plan of the scenarios that you're trying to replicate and recreate. And I think that, to me, is a successful session when, the conversation between you and the goalkeeper was, I want to replicate or, simulate this session so that when you see it on the weekend, you're prepared for it. So let's try and do that. And to me, a successful session is creating that with multiple variables. So we're not saying we're only going to work on cutbacks. It's like, it could be a cutback to the 6, it could be a cutback to the PK, cutback to the 18, cutback lob service. You know what I mean? So you're detailing what you want, but the objective is to create different scenarios so that have different outcomes. And I think that, to me, it is a good session.
I think for me, a successful session, and I think it's level dependent and phase dependent too, where you are in your periodization of your training for the season is going to be dependent on it. But I think a successful session for me is one where you feel you saw what you needed to see out of the session in regards to where there's growth, where there needs to be adjustments, and that the goalkeeper feels that they grew from the session, whether it's learning something about themselves from a negative standpoint or a positive standpoint. I think a lot of times as goalkeeper coaches, we get scared at the end of a session when we don't have a coaching points to give. Like, it's our job to give a coaching point at every 10 seconds. If it's going well and they're growing, like, why step in? Matt Doyle brought this up, from Birmingham City with his youth academy. He said, if it's working and they're growing and they're enjoying themselves, why do I need to step in if the game is teaching it to them?
Right. And sometimes, and again, this is where, and you've touched on it, and Omar, you've touched on it, goalkeeper coaching, unfortunately, becomes a very coach-centered topic when it should be player-centered. If the players are growing, if they're being stretched, and when I say stretched, are they put into situations they're going to grow, from and get better and experience new things? If we put them in growth opportunities, they may not be successful, but that for me is a successful session. One that is player-centered and less coach-centered. And you touched on the internet, and we're all guilty of it. We all put stuff out there, which is fine as long as it's quality stuff. It's not about the coach. It's about sharing information, and it's about the players. And, putting egos aside and things like that become really, really important.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up such a good point right there. And, Omar, I always, give you praise because you don't put up videos for people to say, look how great my service was. Look how great that save was by my goalkeeper. As Tim Dittmer always brings up, they're not your goalkeepers. They're goalkeepers that you're an educator, that you work with, and that you're part of their journey. But you make it sure, like, here's a picture. Here's what I did. I want to know what you think about this. This is why I did this. So let's grow. Let's all benefit from this each other. And I think every time, if we start approaching social media this way, I think we're all only going to keep growing, because in the end, like so many, of the highest level of coaches have said, if it was about me, people would be people will be coming out to the fields to watch me. Like, and that's not, they're there to watch the players. We're there as educators to bring that out of them. And, we're kind of have to take that back seat. Phil, before we go, I want you to take a little bit of time right here for some people who might not be familiar with the IGCC, because I think it's such a fantastic program. And I know we had, the difficult circumstances this year in regards to the situation. But if you can just kind of just shed a little light on the IGCC, GK1, your program, just so if people are a little more familiar and if they want to know more, they can reach out.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, because one of the earbuds died. The International Goalkeeper Coaches Conference obviously was supposed to be in Florida in June. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we had to postpone it. Again, Florida is still, the plan was to try and do it in December. As of right now, that still looks very difficult based upon travel plans and everything else, because it's an international event. We're bringing coaches over from around the world, so immigration and everything else might not allow for that to happen, or even the state, and we don't know 2 months from now how Florida is going to be. So I've either got to find another location for it this year, or look ahead to 2021, and hope that we can run it then. The support that I've had from people throughout this has been fantastic, and due to that support, we're actually going to host a free webinar with some of our presenters that were going to come this year and some past presenters. So we're going to host a webinar, a free IGCC webinar for goalkeeper coaches in the next month.
Oh, that's amazing. And I mean, I think, one of the things that, we really want to stress with this is that these are different types of goalkeeper coaches. And I really want to stress that to all the insiders out there who are listening to the show. You're not getting 6 of the same session. You're getting very different points of view, all valid on the game, because I think one of the great things that you do with that, Phil, is that you showcase that there is no right answer.
Yeah, everyone does it differently. So, for example, we've had Fernando from Benfica, then you had Rene from Ajax, and you've got goalkeeper coaches from all over the world. So there is no right or wrong answer. Since there is a lack of goalkeeper education in this country, it's an opportunity to learn from different people who have different points of view, take a little bit from everyone, put it together in your own style, and become your own coach. So, or add it to your coaching repertoire. And I think for me, that selfishly, that's one of the amazing things about the IGCC is I get to pick and choose bits and pieces from all these coaches from around the world, and you spend the weekend with like-minded people like yourself and Omar, and you get to pick each other's brains and discuss goalkeeping for the weekend. And I mean, there's nothing like it in America, and I certainly hope that we can run it again next year. And like I said, we will be hosting a free webinar for goalkeeper coaches in the very near future. So keep your eyes out for that one.
And when that does happen, guys, we will put that in the show notes. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We will make sure to share that information. Obviously, Omar, you can reach out to him at ProGKAcademy _ or you can just go out to one of your local parks. He's probably hitting a ball, at one of those, trying to find another facility. Remember, guys, contact at Inside the 18. That's the number 18media.com if you have a guest suggestion or a topic suggestion. Shout out to all the insiders who've been reaching out, asking for a session organization episode. We couldn't think of a better person to have on than Phil. You do a dynamite job of posting on social media. Really, really quality stuff, man. I mean, even simple snapshots of your fields, I grow.
Go a long way. Yeah, go a long way.
Long way, man. If people want to reach out to you, I know how active you are on social media, and I know how open you are to give away information. Where is the best place for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can email me at phil@gk1.com, or reach out to me. Did I lose you?
Do that one more time, and we'll throw it into the edit. Yeah.
See now, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can reach out to me on phil@gk1.com, or on Instagram at Phil Wheddon, or at the International Goalkeeper. So.
All right. Well, we lost your audio right there, but we'll make sure to include that all in the show notes, guys. Remember, at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms. Guys, that's all the time on Inside the 18. This has been absolutely phenomenal, and we are out. Later, guys.